What's going on, travel family? How y'all feeling? How are the holidays? And I got to start this way before we get into anything more about the show or what we do, but welcome to 2019. I didn't think I'd be this excited for the new year, but now that I'm here doing the intro, I'm like, you know what? It's kind of lit. We all out here with this kind of fresh slate for our calendars, new opportunities, new goals, new experiences, and a lot of them will come from travel. So I'm so glad you're here with us right now. This, as always, is another broadcast from Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast. I'm your host and tour guide, we can say, Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack. Like I said earlier, I'm just jazzed that you guys are here chilling on the first day of the new year with us. Here at Point Noir, we inspire and encourage men of color and people in general to just be interested in travel. And we do that by sharing amazing travel stories, adventure stories, along with a whole bunch of perspectives and tips about exploring the world around you. And it's just an amazing feeling. So I'm so glad to be here to start off my day of the new year, introducing you guys to another guest, some amazing insights about his travels in the world. And yeah, I'm really over the moon about it. We started this podcast in 2018, and a lot of podcasts don't keep going after a few months, but we've been doing this for 7-8 months at this point, and we also sponsor people to get their passports. So if you want more details about that, hit us up on IG, check out our highlights. We have all the instructions there. It's super clear. And I just want to make sure I share that with you guys before we introduce today's guest. So I hope you guys are sitting back in a comfy place and ready to choose your refreshing beverage of choice. As always, let's introduce today's special guest. Joining us today as our special guest at the Point is Tamsir Genero Guiard-schmid. I really had to practice to get that name right, even though I do speak quite a bit of French, but I wanted to make sure I nailed it for my bro because he really is one of my brothers that I found internationally. You can follow him on Instagram at Tamsir24, and that'll be spelled out in the show description. But through a connection with his mother, when I spent time in Burkina Faso, I got to know Tamsir a little bit. We've hung out in Paris, and not only is he a well-traveled brother from a whole different perspective, coming from a Parisian and West African perspective, but he's so thoughtful and clear in his thinking, and that's one of the things I love about having discussions with him. We've literally sat up all night just over a couple drinks talking about life and our experiences, and I think this interview is a really great example of how conversations like that can just develop naturally as you encounter new and diverse people across the world. So I hope you guys are already in a cozy spot. It is the first of the year, so y'all probably not working. Get a refreshing beverage in your hand and sit back and be prepared to enjoy this 28th session of the Point Noir podcast. I'll see you on the other side. What's going on, Tamsir? Welcome to Point Noir. Thank you so much for joining us, bro. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, Jerry. Thank you for having me. And I'm very excited to be a part of Point Noir, your podcast.
Yeah, dude. I'm super excited to have you on the show because we have a bit of a history. Like, we are like adopted brothers in some way due to your mom, Irene. We met through Burkina Faso Connect. Like, you still staying at the apartment in Paris?
Yeah, still in Paris with some friends who also like to travel. So maybe I will introduce you to them. So it's all great in Paris. Starting to get cold.
It can be great in Paris.
Yes, you already know.
For sure. But so for you guys who probably don't know, or no one would know this, but the apartment that he's in was owned by his mom, who gave me a room there to stay for 9 months. Like, I was struggling to find housing consistently in Paris with no papers and stuff. And his mom stepped in and said, "Hey, you're my son now. I have an apartment. You can stay there. It'll be no problems." And so I'm just super grateful for Irene. And then I got to meet her son, Tamsir, and it's just been great.
She really like you, Jerry.
It's the connections you can get from traveling. But speaking of which, man, you're a traveler. I'm not even going to tell your whole story, but I know you be zooming in and out of the world all the time, based in Paris, France now. Can you tell us how you got started traveling and a little bit of like where you're from, where you were born, your history?
Yeah, sure. It all started with my mom because she's an artist and she traveled a lot since I'm young. So since my first travel, I was 3 months old. I
Wow.
went to Burkina Faso, where she came from. So she introduced me to my grandparents. So I started to travel very young. And after that, I travel every year in almost every continent. So I've been to the US. Every time she have a tour, she will
Hmm.
bring me with her in in her luggage, I could say. She was part of the opening show for the Olympics in Atlanta. So
In
it was my first
96.
time. Yeah, 1996. Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, I went to Atlanta. It was my first time in the US. It was amazing experience. And also, I think that the first thing that make me want to travel is the taste that my parents give me. But also, I'm a very curious person, and I
Mm.
think the best way to meet new people, people who are, I could say, different, and they can enrichir. I don't know if
Yeah, to
you
add
know what
value, to get benefit from.
exactly. It's by traveling.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I grew up in Paris. I left Paris when I was 17 and went to live in Burkina Faso. And also, I discovered that traveling as a tourist and live in another country, it's a very different story.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I like change. I like to change environment. So yeah, and after Burkina Faso, I went to Canada, which is a very different country. Also by
Hmm.
temperature, I could tell. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
So for those who aren't familiar, can you describe Burkina Faso for us? Explain where it is. A lot of people don't know, and like, what do you mean by a change in temperature? What's Burkina Faso like?
okay, yeah, Burkina Faso, it's a country in West Africa, on the north of Ivory Coast and south of Mali.
Hmm.
We don't have the sea, unfortunately, but it's a country. We say about the wealth in this country is not in the soil, is in the people.
Mm.
So the people are very nice. I think you can confirm that, Jerry. You
A
travel
hundred, a
across all
hundred
Africa.
percent, 100%.
And people are very nice, very hospitality,
Yeah.
very how do you
Hospitable.
say hospitable, yes.
Hmm.
And also we have a lot of place to visit. If you go in the north, it's more the desert. Across the Mali, it's almost the Sahara, so it's a desertic landscape. And if you go to the south, it's more green. You have waterfalls in Banfora, les cascades de
Hmm.
Banfora, waterfall in Banfora, and you have also a lot of tribes. So it's a very interesting cultural country to visit. There are a lot of they speak a lot of languages. There is a lot of different type of arts. So yeah, I love my country, and I think if somebody want to discover Africa and especially West Africa, Burkina Faso, it's a place where you can start. It's less famous than country like Senegal or Ivory Coast or Ghana,
Yeah.
which are more touristic, but Burkina Faso has its own charms.
Definitely. And I've been there twice and loved it each time, and I'm looking forward to my next trip. But you mentioned the diversity there. There's something like 60 different ethnicities that live in this one country because of the way it was carved up. So you have a multitude of languages, a multitude of heritage and traditions, but then you also have a lot of art. I think Burkina Faso is one of the art hubs of Western Africa. I think it's got the best art by far out of all the African countries I've traveled to.
Yes, correct. Especially for the statue,
Hmm.
they make a great statue using copper, bronze. They're using wood. You have mask, and it's very interesting because also we have a lot of ceremonial tradition
Hmm.
that still occur even in these days. For example, we have what we call the Moronaba, which is the emperor of the biggest ethnicity, the Mosi.
Yes. Yes.
So they still have the emperor, and it's the first one was in I don't know 12th century. So it's a very 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 old tradition, and you can say every Friday, for example, you have old ritual that everybody can attempt,
Hmm.
and it's very interesting about the culture of the Empire Musi.
Yeah, so the emperor comes out. There are all his dignitaries there. They fire a cannon. It's really cool. I've had the experience. But thanks for introducing us to Burkina Faso. It's definitely lit. But I want to talk more about that. We're going to get back into it because it is a fascinating place that I think more people should visit. But what a change it must have been from living in Paris for most of your life, traveling some, but then living in Burkina Faso, where your mom and a lot of your heritage comes from, to then going to Canada. Why'd you go to Canada?
Because I went to Burkina Faso. I think if I never went to Burkina Faso, I've been staying in Paris my whole life. But the
Mm,
fact that I changed my environments, that I went to a very different country for 2 years, it opened my mind. It opened my mind. So when I graduated from high school, I didn't want to go back to Paris. Yeah, I was thinking it was a setback. I wanted to discover a new country,
right.
and being only a French speaker for a good university, Montreal was an obvious choice. So I didn't really know anybody at this time when I decided to go there. But with my parents' support, I went there, and it was a wonderful experience for real. I really, really like Montreal. It's one of my best city.
Right. And it's super diverse there too. You have a lot of, Canada has these hotspots like Montreal and Toronto, which they're incredibly diverse, aren't they?
Yes, correct. Because there is a big university and people coming across the world. So in Canada, I discover I meet for the first time a lot of people from South America, for example.
Mm,
Uh, Also people from other country in Africa. I didn't know any people from East Africa or South Africa. Meet the first of, for example, Kenyan people in Montreal.
yeah.
So it was also Asia. Yeah, Montreal was amazing. It's like you said, it's cosmopolitan. It's young, a very good energy, a very good vibes. The only issue it's the winter. Oh my god, Jerry, the winter is like, damn.
What's the deal?
It's very crazy, so crazy.
Yeah, it's intense. So, what he didn't mention about Burkina Faso is that not only is it landlocked, but it's pretty much a desert, arid region. So it's dry, it's hot, there's a lot of wind. There's no winter. Winter is a you have to say it with air
Yeah.
quotes. So Montreal is a whole different. That's a beast. But you're brave. A lot of people don't leave because they hear there's snow. So you wanting to explore, the physical elements of an environment is dope. I respect that.
Yeah, it was an experience, but I think I didn't understand the full scope of the Canadian winter, because when I came in Montreal the first time, all my friend was, "Oh, yo, bro, you need to get a serious coat, a Canada Goose," and I'm like, "Oh man, I know the winter since Paris. It's not that bad. I have my
Yeah,
coat. It's okay." And when I feel my first snowstorm, I was
yeah,
like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. I called my dad. I was like, damn, I need to buy a real coat because it's could go to minus 30 in
yeah.
Celsius, which
Hmm.
is crazy. In France, here when we have zero, people are going crazy. They don't go to work, you know.
Yeah.
So minus 30, it's a lot. Like it's a lot.
That's real deal temperatures. I don't even get that all the way in the United States. You need to be in like Montana or, Buffalo, New York to get experiences like that. It's cold up in Canada. So for those of you guys planning trips out there, don't play in the wintertime. If you come, come prepared.
And also, which is strange in Canada, it's if you go, for example, in Quebec, which is on the north of Montreal, the winter
Hmm.
is it's worse, we could say. But if you go to Toronto, which is pretty much the same latitude as Montreal, it's not. It's a warmer winter. So it's very strange. And I heard I never been there, but I heard that if you go to Vancouver, for example, it's
Yeah,
not the same. It's very different. So yes, so it's particular to Canada because I was surprised when I discovered, for example, that Paris was in more in the north than Montreal.
it is. That's
You
true.
know? Yeah, you know, you could be surprised when you see the image of the winter in Montreal and the winter in Paris. But yeah, so
Right.
yeah, you need to get prepared.
I mean, and it's things to learn, things you wouldn't have seen in France, things you wouldn't have seen in Burkina Faso. And I think it's really interesting how you met your first East Africans and Southern Africans in Montreal. Isn't it funny that you could be on the first off, y'all, the continent of Africa is freaking huge. Like the maps do it no justice. You can just Google about that, but like you really don't have a sense of how big the freaking continent is until you get there. And people who live technically what looks to be not too far from you, you didn't meet till you went to a whole different other country. That's wild.
Yes, so true. Yeah, it's you're correct. Yeah, I have to go to Montreal because I live in Africa for 2 years, 2 years and a half. But I have to go to Montreal to meet my first friend from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Eritrea. So yeah, it's crazy. But I think the issue that we have in Africa, it's very expensive to travel across Africa. You know,
Yep.
to go, it's cheaper to do Paris Dakar than Ouagadougou, which is the capital of Burkina Faso, Dakar.
Hmm.
But it's a 2 hours flight from Ouagadougou to go to Dakar, but it's expensive than Paris Dakar. This is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So for those of you guys who don't have your maps or aren't so strong in geography, Dakar is in Senegal, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's a 2 hour flight from Burkina Faso to Senegal, but that ticket is more expensive than flying from Burkina Faso all the way to Paris, which is, all, I mean, that's a 6 hour flight.
7 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 hours. Yeah, it's crazy,
So
man.
some of that has to do with, neo-colonialism, and I don't know how much we'll get into that, but you got to experience that firsthand because what happens is when you don't leave your place, you never run into these challenges, and then you have to ask questions about your history. So really my next question for you is, after seeing what it's like to be a Parisian, just to be Burkinabe, to be a Canadian a little bit, what sort of things did you discover about the world that maybe were different than what you expected?
Um, I think it's the people. I
Mm,
think when you travel, you meet new people, and you start to really understand people because I think we have the tendency to compare the people using our own standard, our
mm,
own perspective. So I remember since I was like 3 years old, I went to Burkina Faso every year. But I was living, and when I was going there, I was going there as a Parisian. So I didn't really open my eyes or really understand, and I have to take some few months to really get the people there. So this is the first thing, but it's more about maybe traveling for a long time than just go to 1 week. The thing which is difficult for me to answer that question is that I start traveling before I don't even have my first memory of traveling. So
mm,
I traveled since my since 3 months. I travel every year.
yeah.
So for me, it's like normal, you know.
Hmm.
It's like a way of life. I think I couldn't do 1 years in one place without traveling. For me, traveling it's essential to my curiosity, to my development as a person. Uh, I think if you don't travel, you lose something very important because traveling it's opening a window to another world.
Mm.
Each travel it's a new world that you discover. So yeah. But I didn't have the experience of not traveling for a few years, for example. So I can't even tell you the difference because for me it's always been traveling every year.
Right. So you always had that element of change, of different that was in some way in your life from a very early age. So now I mean, it's definitely just normal.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. And we have a few guests that have been in similar, in the States, usually you need to be military or something like that to have such a different travel experience. But what do you think about the difference between how Europeans travel and or Africans travel and how Americans travel? Do you think it's the same sort of experience?
Um, I don't know. For example, I can speak for myself, but I like to travel in a place where I know somebody who live in this place.
Hmm.
I have the chance to have friends in every continent, in Asia, in Africa, in Australia, in the South America, in the US. Yeah, because when you go there, for example, I was in the Philippines
Right.
2 years ago, and I have one of my best friends who live there, and he's also half Filipinian and half French. So before we went there, he tell me the place that's you don't see on internet or in the tourist guide. You know, the nice place, the nice island, the nice spot where you can go and you can discover not another part of the Philippines. And I'm pretty sure if I just go there by myself, knowing anybody, I will miss all that. It was
Right.
the same when I went to Panama few months ago. I have one of my dear friend from college in Canada who is living in Panama right now,
Hmm.
and I went there and he made me discover all the country. So this is, I think, when I travel, the my main guideline is to know somebody there, and I'm not sure if it's the same for the American people, for example. When you talk me about your parcours, Jerry, I was
Hmm.
like, wow, so brave. You go there and improvise, I could say, right? When you went to Paris, for example, to just go there and okay, let's see how it goes. I think for example, in the French mentality, it's more about planning and maybe knowing somebody or doing with within an organization.
Mm, yeah. Well, I tried to do it within an organization. They were a French company and they didn't like that idea. So I think there is sort of that dynamic. I definitely when I was in France, I felt like I was perceived to be the American cowboy who would quit because I
Yeah.
worked at the same job as many of my French friends. We
Hmm.
you know we had similar roles, similar positions, and they were like, "You gave all that up," because there are a lot of benefits that come with having a good ass job in France. Um, but at the same time, I think that Europeans and Africans are oftentimes exposed to travel earlier than Americans are. It's easier to get around Europe. It can be easy. You can take a drive down to Cote d'Ivoire or Mali or something like that. I feel like Americans really don't move around a lot.
Yes, but I think it's also because America it's like so huge. I travel, I think maybe 5 or 6 times in the US. I went to, but only the East Coast. I see the
Mm,
difference between Miami, Atlanta, and New York, for example. It's so different.
yeah.
I think we have the same in Europe, but it's in 3 hours from Paris. I can go to Belgium, for example. It's another country,
Right.
and man, I think the change between Paris and Belgium, it's almost. I don't say it's the same, but I can guess that's almost the same. That's the change between New York and Los Angeles.
Hmm.
I heard that's so different also. So I think this maybe the American people like to discover more their own country before traveling abroad. I think maybe it's an explanation of that. But yeah, I think in France with your school, for example, with my school when I was in high school, I went to Italy twice, Venice, Rome, Napoli. I have friends who go to. It's pretty common to go to London with your school, and I'm
Right.
talking about high school or grade younger. So yeah, you start traveling very easily and very young at a very young age compared to the US.
I think that makes a little bit of a difference, but you do bring up a good point. Like the United States as one country is when you look at it and really understand that it makes no sense whatsoever why a country would be that big. The way we divide states is how other continents divide out countries. It's crazy.
Yes, yeah. I think it will take like a whole year to discover all the US, maybe.
Right? Or I mean, even to see all 50 states, it's
Mm.
it is a big place. So that's one of the reasons why I definitely do encourage people who want to start traveling to start with the states. Go to a national monument or just something simple and start learning the skills of preparing yourself for a trip. Learn how to get a good flight, learn how to, book an Airbnb because there's a lot of beautiful stuff here in the states besides the big city hubs. After you went to school in Montreal, where did you go next?
Oh, after Canada, I went back to Paris to work.
And that, wait a second, that was recently though, right? It's only been maybe 2 years, maybe since I left. You came right after I left.
Yeah, summer 2017. When we went to the Fat Bar, I was just installing in in Paris.
Yeah, we went out a little bit while I was in town. I've been able to see you twice since I've been in Paris. It's been dope.
Yeah, it's been great. Always great to see you, Jerry.
Good little cookout on the roof. Yeah, we be out there. Do you plan to go anywhere after Paris?
Yes, for sure. I don't want to stay in Europe, or even I want to go to Africa. It's one of the thing I'm sure about in my life. It's I want to have my children, to build my home in Africa, in West
Mm.
Africa, because like you said before, Africa is so huge. So people tend to think it's like one big country, but it's so different. I think when I went to South Africa, I was like, wow, it's so different than the Africa that I know, because I'm
Right.
more about West Africa. So yeah, for sure, I want to go back there. And this it's because my experience when I was younger, when I went to high school there, and I learned to live there. And I think it's what I want to do. I want to. If there is so much thing to do there, so much work to achieve, and I think I will in few years. I hope you will come to visit me. Not sure
Of
I will go
course.
to Burkina Faso though.
Okay.
Maybe Ivory Coast, maybe Ghana for start.
Okay.
But yeah, for sure West Africa.
And I find that fascinating. I remember we were talking and you shared with me that that was on your mind to do. So, y'all, you got to imagine he grew up in Paris, which is like the dream for a lot of people when it comes to traveling. They just want to see the Eiffel Tower, they want to see the Arc de Triomphe, and they want to do that sort of stuff. Grew up in Paris, so but was still traveling with his Burkina Bay mother. Decided to then go live in Burkina Faso, which is a developing nation. It's developing. Then went to Montreal, then went back to Paris and says he wants to move back to some of these areas that are currently developing. And it's really interesting because a lot of nations that are developing deal with what we call brain drain. It's when they're educated sons and daughters like Tamsir leave and never ever come back. So I think you're not the only one that wants to come back and kind of enrich your country, your homeland with the things you've learned, right?
Yes, correct. And I think it's a movement that because a lot of my friends who's from a diaspora like me, I
Mm-hmm.
met a lot of them from Africa, especially in during my college year in Montreal. There's a lot of African students there, and a lot of them after graduate stay a few years to get experience to have to start a career, we could say. But most of them want to go back, and I have a lot of them that have already came back to their home country.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that I'm not alone with this type of project, and I think there's more and more. When I discuss and exchange with other people, we have I could say the same type of profile, like you said, from the diaspora. I think we all want to go back and try to achieve something in our home country.
It's super dope. And I think that it kind of points to a different direction for many of these countries. As Africa is a young continent. Something like 40% of the population is under 40. So this is where the
Yes.
current generation is thinking. They say, okay, we might not have grown up here our whole lives, but we value our education and the skills we've learned, and we see that there's a need back at home because we value what's going on there and the culture and opportunities there. It's super dope.
Yes, so dope, like you say. But I think what's it's also interesting to say that there is a trap. I think when you go to study abroad,
Hmm.
it's to when you graduate, you have a career. Maybe you just want to do an investment and you buy an house, not to live there, but just to rent the house, just as an investment. For example, you meet someone from another country. I have a lot of friends who meets their companion from other country during their college years. So sometimes it could be very difficult, even if you have the plan to come back. It could be very difficult to really come back in your home country. You know what I mean, Jerry?
Right,
So, for
because you
example,
start having success in your career, you might meet someone that's
yeah,
important to you. You might. You might start a family before you thought
Yeah,
you would.
yeah, it's so. And when I was in Montreal, I have a lot of friends who from African country who meet a guy or girl from Canada or from Latin America or from I don't know another country.
Oof.
And then I'm talking to them, they're still in Canada. Yeah, yeah, we're coming back every year, but it's difficult. And I have the same issue when I'm here because I have my career in Paris. It's doing great. I'm doing great. I'm very happy. And I know it's a real challenge. It's a real change to go back in Africa. You have to take some risk. And I think, this is the good thing that I learned from, Canada is different than the US, but for us European, we could say that it's the North American mentality or Anglo-Saxon mentality that
Hmm.
you are more a risk taker,
Yeah.
yeah, compared to French people. French people don't like to take risk, so yeah, I think you have to not to be afraid to take risk to go back to Africa. It's a risk, but I think it's worth it.
I would agree. I've had similar choices, and for some people, even when it comes to doing any sort of trip or any sort of travel, forget repatriating or becoming an expat somewhere,
Hmm.
it's a risk because hey, my job says I only have 3 more days left this year, but this trip is going to be 4 days. So is it worth possibly losing my job or having a tough discussion with my boss? And these sort of decisions, we go to school, we try to get good grades, we work hard at our jobs to succeed, and the fact that travel could possibly add so much more to your life that you would say, okay, I'll pause in my career or I'll have that tough discussion with your boss speaks to the impact that these experiences can have on you.
But traveling is an investment in yourself, so I think it's worth it. It's worth take the risk. For example, one of the gain that I had by traveling, I
Hmm.
think that when you travel and you're traveling a lot or you travel in different country, you develop the ability to adapt in different environments. Yeah,
Yeah.
to interact with people who don't have the same code as you, who don't speak like you do. You don't have the same sense of humor. You don't have the cultural code. So I think this ability that you develop, it's useful in your personal life, but also in your professional life. I'm working in a global company, so we have a partnership in Germany and other country,
Right.
and be able to interact easily with some colleague, but from other country. It's a great asset in your professional career, but also in your personal life.
Right. It's huge, and it's one thing that I think employers now are starting to realize, at least in the states, that you might have someone who takes a gap year, as we call it in the states, where between college and when they started their professional career, they went and traveled. But especially in areas like hospitality, they need traveled people with open mindsets and the ability to adapt, just like you said, to service their customers better, who are becoming more and more international.
Yes, exactly. We do the same in French. We It's une année de césure, which means during your college, during your study, you do break for example 1 year to travel, to
Hmm.
discover the world, and when you come back, you have achieved something, and you have developed a skill that will be useful all your life.
Talking about adapting and challenges, it might appear, since you are living in Paris and the French get more vacation and you have a solid job and you just have so much experience traveling, it might appear that you don't have any challenges when it comes to visiting a new country or planning a trip. But I'm curious, what sort of challenges do you still have when it comes to traveling? What about traveling is difficult for you now?
Um, I could say that I think now my main challenge it's the budgeting. You know,
Mm,
because like I said before, with my girlfriend, I went to Philippines. We had a budget. We exploded. Like this was multiplied by two, but it was okay. We have a great vacation, so we enjoyed. But we said, okay, next time we won't do the same mistake. Okay. So after that, we went to Panama.
hmm.
It was also great vacation, but we also explored our budget. So we like, what's the problem with us, you know? So
Right.
yes, I think the financial planification, it's my greatest challenge because, like I said, as a as a French man, I like to organize, and but also I like to enjoy my life. You know, traveling, it's about experience. So
Yeah.
if you we went to Panama, and there is there, you know, Jerry, if you go there, you must go to Isla Coiba.
Isla Coiba?
Isla Coiba, it's because the Panama has the particularity that it's easy to go to the Caribbean Sea and also
Mm-hmm.
to the Pacific Ocean. You know, it's very
Okay.
easy.
Right.
And we went to on the Pacific Ocean. It's Santa Catalina, and there is a natural park. It's called Isla Coiba. It's like, wow, it's paradise. But we didn't plan all that when we went there. We planned that we want to go there, but not into the detail. So there is a lot of dépenses supplémentaires, unexpected expense, you know.
Right.
But like, okay, you we explode our budget, but at least it's an experience that's I will never regret it. I see whales, dolphin, squirrels. I swim with a sea turtle. You know, it's like a dream come true for
Wow.
me. So yeah, I think the thing is in trouble. You can try to plan everything, but if you're traveling, there is also an expected experience. And
Mm-hmm.
when you see this type of opportunity, you should do it, I think. You know, don't say, oh,
Yeah.
yes, we didn't plan, so we don't know. Yeah. You're traveling, it's an experience. Like we said, traveling is about change. It's about learning stuff. It's about investing in yourself. So when you see an opportunity to discover a new thing, even if it wasn't in the planning, you should do it. That's my opinion.
Right. So even though you're exploding the budget, I love that I love that phrasing. Exploding the budget, it's more investment. You just said, "Hey, I just paid an extra tuition that I didn't, expect to pay, but it'll be okay."
Yes, exactly.
I like it. I dig it. So yeah, people even like yourself, myself, we still have challenges. And out of all of the places you've been to, 6 continents, so far, what has been the most challenging place for you to adapt to, given all your experience, growing up and as a child, and as you continue to travel? I know you were in South Africa not too long ago, uh,
Mm-hmm.
Panama, Asia. What's been the most challenging area for you to adapt yourself to?
I think it's Asia.
Okay.
I've been twice in Asia. I've been in India. That was the first time, but it was with my parents. We went to the south, Pondicherry, Chennai, and the Kerala. So it was beautiful. But it was one of my first like real cultural, I could say, shock. You
Mm-hmm.
know, due to my parcours, I'm like French, but I'm also West African, and I'm also could say that's Canadian. I spent 7 years in Canada, so you know
Yeah.
it's easy for me to connect to this type of culture. You know, when I went to the US, I'm not like okay shock. When I go to Africa, it's the same. But when I went there, I was like, okay, wow, it's so different, so wow. When I'm talking to the people. Everything is new, you know. So it's more difficult to adapt. You are very out of your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
and which make the travel very interesting. I think you have to go with the good person. You know, you have to be with people also open minded, ready to do experience. Because if you go with, it depends. If I never traveled alone, for example, so I can't speak about that. But if you travel with people and you are not on the same level of open minded,
Right.
it could be very difficult because sometimes you know the food. Or I lost like 4 kilo in India
Oof.
because you know they
10
don't eat
pounds.
steaks. Yeah, 10 pounds. They don't eat steaks. I was like eating almost every day. It was a vegetarian food, very spicy. So you know, it wasn't easy for me. You know, I like barbecue cookout. So yeah, but
Yeah.
it was the first time for me that I went to a country with no type of connection, I could say.
Yeah, yeah, that's real. And you mentioned the United States not being a huge cultural shock because you've seen kind of what to expect from the TV shows, from the music videos.
Yeah.
But unless you're, I mean, even if you're watching a lot of Indian content, it's different. You know, a Bollywood film is a lot different than being on the ground. From everything I've heard, India can be very intense.
Yo, for example, just a simple example, but it was funny. But we went to see a movie in the theater. So
Mm-hmm.
when we were in India, so for example, there was two entr'actes during the movie because it's like 4 hours. You go to the movie for 4 hours. I'm like, okay, during the first 30 minutes, it was okay, cool. Well, at this moment, there was an actor. I guess it was a famous Indian actor who appeared in the movie.
Yeah.
When he appeared, all the people in the room, they start to clap, wow, applaud, like it was in the theater, but it was just appearing in the movie. I was like, come on, what's happening? They was like so cheering. It's like in the a soccer game for us. I was like, okay, it's
Yeah.
so crazy. But this is type of shock or cultural differences. That's it's funny, it's interesting, and but also désorienté. What do you say?
Orienté, qui vient d'où?
Can confuse, qui peut te confondre, enfin
Ah, oui.
t'embrouiller.
Oui, oui, oui. The things that can kind of throw you off, confuse you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. For example, in France, we do la bise. You
Oui.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, a kiss on each
kiss
cheek when you
cheeks,
greet people. Yeah.
Even between men, it's like, okay, But
Yeah.
in India, it's like, okay, no, don't do that. So, could
Don't
be
do
like
that.
very, yeah, no, don't do that. Especially if you don't know the person, if they're not like international Indian, could be
Mm-hmm.
very misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm. Or offensive or something like that.
Yeah, especially so. Yeah, when you travel in a country that's have a lot of cultural differences, you have to be also careful not to offend, even if you it's not in purpose. You could offend a person. So yeah, you have to also. It's one of the challenge, I think.
Yeah, and I think you brought up such a great point when you mentioned the code, because I look at it that way as well. That there's a code, there's a kind of an unwritten set of rules that everybody follows. So how do you learn to pick up the code? I imagine the first day you arrived in India, you felt much differently than on the last day. How did you pick up the code when you had no one there that you knew, and it's not written down?
I think the first thing is to observation.
Mm,
When you travel, your ears are wide open, your eyes are wide open. You observe how the people behave, and you don't. You try to have not to assume. It should be like that or should be like that. You just like try
right.
to be like a new baby, newborn, and just okay, listen. Oh, they do like that. Okay, I will follow their lead. They eat with their hand. I will eat with my hand. Or they do not to, and don't assume that because they're Indian they will do like that, or because they're from this country will do like that. Uh, it's funny because, for example, in Burkina Faso, we eat the rice. We eat like a lot of food with our hand, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you eat like pasta, spaghetti, and a lot of people eat spaghetti, they will never eat it with their hand. So for
Right.
example, if you come in Burkina and you say, oh yes, Burkina Faso they eat with their hand, and you go to eat and there is a spaghetti and you eat with your hand, they will see like, oh man, this guy is crazy. It's
Right.
you have to observe, see how the people behave, and just try to adapt. I think, and not came with your own idea and impose them or
I think that's really good advice. That's great advice. It's the perfect advice is to take a step back and observe. Because even for someone with your level of experience, you've seen a lot of things, but there are areas where you don't know anything about still. So to have some humility, to be humble, and take a step back and
yes.
say, hey, instead of dictating or coming with my ideas of how we should eat food, I'm going to watch and fit in. I mean, I think it gives you a better experience.
Yes, correct. It's exactly that. Also about the challenging, I think there is also it was more challenging for me in Asia, also as a black person. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Because in Africa, obviously, it's like okay. In Europe, they used to, but when I went to Philippines, I think I didn't see a lot of black person. And
Right.
for example, I was working in the mall, and we are like it was a huge mall, but we were the only two black person with my girlfriends, and the people were like looking at you in the streets, pointing finger at you, not in the bad way, but they're like, oh wow, some black folks. My mom told me when she went to Taiwan, she was working with the braids. It's braid les tresses. Yeah,
Yeah, for hair.
yeah, the braids. Yeah, exactly. And the Chinese girl was like so shocked. They grab it without asking,
Right.
and not they didn't intend in a wrong way or in a bad way. It's just like so. Yeah, I think it's why Asia was also more challenging for me because I was in a country. I was in a country where they were not used to a lot of black people.
I could see that being more difficult to try to take a step back and adapt when people are always trying to they're always pointing you out as a center of attention. So where do you get to step back from? You're not walking around trying to grab somebody else's hair. It's something that's only happening because you're there.
Yes, exactly.
I think observing the code is definitely the way to go. So out of all of your travels, and you've seen black people all over the world. You've experienced what it means to be a black man all over the world. What do you think have you learned the most from? How has travel added to your idea of yourself as a man, as a black man from the diaspora?
I think the first thing it's when I went to Africa. I learned a lot about what's meant to be a black man from an West African people, because even in
Mm-hmm.
Africa it's different. I think from west to east to south to Central Africa, they
Yes,
all have a different perception of
and northern.
the.
Don't forget the northerners out there. The
Yes, also
Egyptians
not,
who
but
don't think they're
it's
African.
so different, and I don't know I've never experienced the Maghreb, for example.
Yeah.
But also one of the reasons it's because I'm afraid of the racism, and even if it's not true, because it's some construction in my mind. I have some friends who went there in Morocco, Tunisia, and they have a great travel. But I also heard bad experience from other friends, so I'm mixed feeling, and I have mixed feelings. I don't know if I really want to go there, but it's one of my I plan to go to Dubai in May.
Hmm.
So yeah, I will try more to discover the Arabic country, Middle East, and also the north of Africa.
Right.
But returning to your question, yes, when I went to live in Burkina Faso, I discovered another perception of the black man. When I go to to Canada, I start to meet a lot of African American, and also a different perception, because in France we watch a lot of American show, TVs. I'm a big fan of rap. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have all this imaginary, football, like your football, which is not the real
Yes.
football, but uh, all this, and this is also one of the things that want me to go to Canada. It was to go to a college like in the campus, big campus, all this image I have from North America.
Yeah.
And in Paris, it's also different how how the perception of the black man. So I think what I want to tell it's to maybe take when you observe you have to choose to take some parts of this perception or this image that you have of what it is to be a black man,
Hmm.
and but keep the good thing, because
Yeah.
when you travel there's also a good and bad thing that you will compare to your perception. Yes, so to take what you think it's worth it and keep it and absorb it to incorporate in your identity, and the thing that you think it's more negative maybe don't. For me, for example, I think I always try to, yes, keep the good thing that I observe, that I, for example, in Africa it's a lot about family,
Yes.
more than in
Yes.
France. Family is very important. For a man, it's family. It's what matter. In Paris, it's more different. It's more individualist way of life. So this is, for example, I know that I want to get married. A lot of my friends from Paris don't want to get married. They don't have this idea of building a family, a home. This way more classic, I could say. This is
Yep.
something I grabbed when I absorbed. When I was there to around in this environment. I think it's a beautiful thing. And to be close to your family, because we have big family. You meet my aunt. I
Yeah.
have like I don't know how many cousins, how many aunts. So and to be close with your family, it's something it's important. But before, I went there, I didn't really absorb that in my personality, in my construction of
Right.
who I am.
So it sounds like that these different experiences from travel have allowed you more options in how you see yourself. You know, when you might not have been so family oriented, you saw Black people in a culture, Black men in a culture providing for families, and you said, you know what, I think I like that, and I think I want to add that to who I am. Is that what
Yes,
you're
exactly.
saying? Okay.
Yes,
I,
exactly.
listen, my English apparently is not on point today. Um,
No,
next time we'll
yeah.
have to do this whole thing in French, and people will see how much practice I need. That's funny, but no, I think it's definitely true, man. I've been able to um, see Black people, but even more for me is the history, because
Mhm.
you might not know anymore, but every time I go to a new African country, one of the things on the itinerary is a history lesson. You know that you go to Cape Verde, they want to show you their point of no return. You go to Burkina Faso, they want to tell you
Mhm.
about the l'esclavage and all the things that happened through there.
Mhm.
You go to Congo, it's the same thing. So I had very intense historical perspectives that filled in some of the story that, or a lot of the story that we don't get in the United States about enslaved people and the slave trade from from the continental point of view. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah, the other perspective.
Yeah, and everyone's got their own thing, but I mean, I've had some very deep moments in there. And for me, for you, it expanded your idea of family and, those things that you're proud of. And for me, it was, it was pride as well, about how strong my ancestors were to go through that
Yeah,
experience and how much pride there was in at least having an idea of where you come from. That was important.
yeah, to understand your roots.
Yeah, yeah. That's a thing and that's one of the most difficult things to explain to Europeans, to explain to other Africans being a Black American. That's the question. Where are you from? I
Mm.
got that question so many times in Paris. And you get that question too, I'm sure. Your answer is a little bit different because at some point you'll say Burkina Faso, my mom's from Burkina Faso, my dad's from uh Italy.
Italy, yeah.
So that kind of stops there. But I get
Yeah.
asked the same question 4 times. Where are you from? I say the States. Yeah, but where are you from? Pennsylvania. But where are your people from? And I'm just like, bro, did you forget the slave trade?
Yeah. Yeah, because in France, usually when they ask, the most of the black people in France can trace their origin easily. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
from originally from Mali, Burkina Faso, Senegal. But in the USA, yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, and it's always just an awkward moment when you're having a good time in a bar and someone wants to get to know you better. It's an awkward question because it just never clicks with them like, oh, you guys have no idea coming from the States.
Yeah.
Well, listen, bro, we're rounding out the end of this interview. I definitely want to know what kind of trips you have going on and if there are any projects or businesses you have that you want to talk about. Let us know what you got going on.
Yeah. Like I said before, I'm planning a trip in Dubai just to discover. It wasn't one of my first choice, but I'm like, okay, let's try more the Arabic country to
Okay.
discover. So yes, Dubai in May. I plan to go to Thailand, so go back to Asia because the Philippines was dope, man. So yes, I want to try the Thailand. So I'm doing the Thailand this summer, and also I want to discover a new country, but this is not sure yet. I want to go to Gabon, which is
Gabon.
Central
Okay.
Africa.
Yeah.
You know, it's near Cameroon. The capital is Libreville. I never went there, but my two roommates are from Gabon, and they're so funny, so good vibes. So I'm like, okay, let's try it. So I want to discover also more Africa, not
Yeah.
just because I've been only in West Africa, in South Africa, Cape Town, and now I'm like, okay, let's explore the Central Africa and maybe later the East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my traveling plan for 2019. And yeah, in my personal life and in my professional life, I'm just working piece by piece, planning to return, like I said, in Africa. And I think it's a lot of work. In a personal point and in a professional view, it's a lot of work. So Yes, step by step. But I'm confident that in a few years you will be able to come by my house in I don't know, West Africa, Ouagadougou, Abidjan, Cotonou, Dakar. Who knows?
It'll be a turn up. I'll definitely bring bottles. And also for those of you who maybe have been following the show, but every time I mention that the custom clothes that you can get out of Western Africa, those joints came out of Burkina Faso. So I'm super stoked every time I get to wear my patterns and my shirts from there because it was an experience. It was definitely a great experience. So you guys can also do some shopping, get some stuff tailored out there.
Yes, for real. You have a lot of beautiful tissue and great artisans, so you are a good model for stylish from Burkina Faso, Jerry.
Yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. We'll open a suit shop. That'll be the running joke on the show. I'm just going to open suit shops in different companies in countries. But bro, it's been so great to have you on the show. Like our connection is one of my favorites because it's been an honor to be adopted into people's families. Like you mentioned earlier, I've met your aunts. I showed up, y'all, to like his mom's neighborhood where a lot of his family still lives in the same area. And as soon as I showed up, everyone was like, Tamsir. And I was like, no, I'm not your nephew.
The whole thing, it was me. I'm like, okay, yeah, Jerry, okay.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's definitely a compliment, but it was so funny.
Yeah, me too. For me, it's a compliment.
It was so funny, and it's such good vibes out there. So it's been great. So I'm looking forward to more adventures, and once I get my act together, I'll be out there jamming with you as you tour through Africa, at least through Paris. So I'm looking forward to my next visit.
Oh yeah, me too.
Absolutely. Well, man, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and you have some safe travels coming up in 2019. I'm looking forward to hearing the stories.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And thank you for having me, Jerry.
Of course, man. Take care, bro. Listen, y'all, I've done quite a few interviews for the show, and there will be many more to come, but I think this is going to be one of my favorite because it is so rare that we as Americans of color from the United States get to hear from our counterparts all across the world. And I love the way that Tamsir can clearly and succinctly speak to Western African culture, European culture, his experience in North America. Like, I think it's so valuable to see how our brothers and sisters across the world think and reflect on their experiences, especially regarding travel and identity. So thank you so much, Tamsir. I know there was a lot of words. I'm going to say his full name one more time. Tamsir Genero Guiard-schmid, just because I practiced it so many times. Y'all can follow him on IG at Tamsir24. That's TAMSIR24. And keep up with his upcoming adventures. And maybe you guys will get to see his repatriation back into Africa, wherever he lands out. And I'm so curious. I'd love to know if you guys would also consider setting up your family, your homestead, buying a home in some of these developing African nations that can probably use your talent, your resources, but more than that, probably value you more than some of the pockets of society that we're in the United States. That's my honest belief about it, and it's something that comes up in my mind when I think of my future goals, especially going into 2019. And man, if you haven't been out to the continent yet, I hope this episode inspires you and gives you some points of reference to just start exploring. And it's awesome to see a viewpoint of one of our brothers overseas who brings so much to the table. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening. And if you fool with the vibe, if you like what we're doing, make sure you spend just like 2 minutes. It literally takes 2 minutes to leave a 5-star review and rating on iTunes. We'd appreciate it. And others would love to know your experience with the show as well. In lieu of that, we're always available on IG at Point Noir Show. Shoot us a DM, leave a comment under a picture. Let us know what you thought, what you love to hear about the episodes. We'd love to hear from you. With that all being said, this is the beginning of 2019, y'all. I hope it is a productive, safe, and healthy year for you guys. Take care of each other. I'm so glad you started it with us. And I'm Jerry the Third, signing off. Peace.